There was some place in the middle of my 10-mile diet where I stood in my backyard and I realized that I had changed and that food, when I thought food, I no longer thought the store. And not only that, I didn't exactly even think my garden. I knew it is in there, or Trisha, my gardener friend's garden. I felt food. I was like, oh, I'm an animal. I live in food. Food is not scarce in nature, exactly. Food is everywhere. I mean, animals survive without the store, without their garden. They survive in the natural world because the world is edible.
That's right.
The world is including
edible.
me.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm on Whidbey Island in Washington State, and my guest is Vicki Robin, who, thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
The last time we met, we talked about Your Money or Your Life, which is a fabulous book that has changed lives, including ours, from all over, so thank you for that.
You're so welcome.
But you were in the middle of starting a 10-mile diet at that point, and have got a book out, Blessing the Hands That Feed Us. Tell us about that.
Right. What eating closer to home can teach us about food, community, and our place on earth. That's the whole title. It's a mouthful.
Nice.
It's a paragraph. Anyway, so yes, I was doing the 10-mile diet, and I did that on a double dare from a friend of mine who was a farmer who wanted to know if she wanted to do a 30-day supersize me, but it was super veggie me experiment. So she wanted to see if she could actually feed somebody from her garden. And so we did the experiment and worked out the details and realized, oh no, well, I'm a meat eater, I need some meat. So we defined this circle, not just her garden, but the 10 miles between her garden and my house, that circle. And I found meat, I found milk, I found cheese, I found honey. Somebody said, oh, it's not a problem to do a 10-mile diet, go to the grocery store. It's like, oh, wait a second. I did go to the grocery store and all I found that was in my 10-mile circle was honey. So, not to like belabor the diet, but what it showed me was like, it was shock after shock after shock of like, oh, that grocery store, that, we treat the grocery store like the replicator on the Starship Enterprise. We think, I want eggs, we go down to the store and we get eggs, as though the store, we don't have to think about it.
Yes.
We don't know where that all comes from. We don't, and we're starting to be educated about it, but we're not starting to be educated about it in terms of what is a food system? What are all the steps it takes to get there? So I realized I'm standing in the middle of my local store, locally owned, with only one local product in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And go back to the shocks. Give me a couple of examples.
Yeah, so that
of the
was
shocks.
one shock is that the grocery store,
Doesn't have local stuff.
doesn't have local stuff. The ferry stops running, the bridge goes down, 3 days of food on the shelves. Basically, we don't have a storehouse of food on this island. We don't have food stored in the ground, we don't have it stored in farms, we don't have it stored in the stores. And most people don't even pay attention to the emergency preparedness. So that's one thing, that we're very vulnerable and we don't know we are. Second thing is that raw milk. It's illegal to buy milk from my neighbors who milks her cow to make some money. Milk money is like the money that you make from milking your cow, so you have money to buy your needle and pins. It's been a traditional rural way of, making some surplus on your farm.
Sure.
So it's illegal. Pasteurization is the law of the land. I learned a lot about what the downside is of raw milk. But it sort of alerted me to that there should be scale appropriate regulations. There should be a system for the people who just want to run in and buy a carton of milk and don't care that there's 100 cows and the milk's been boiled. They don't care. All they want is milk that isn't going to kill them and it's going to make their coffee white in the morning. But for people who want to support their local economy, whether it's that it's an economic thing, whether it's that you like that milk better, whether it's that you feel more secure if you have a local source of milk, whatever it is.
Whether you think it's healthier.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly,
Whatever your
I do local
concepts.
cream. I think it's healthier.
Exactly. Whatever your concept.
Yeah.
that's where I'm a green libertarian. That's like, no. People who are embedded in a real community, in a real place, should have some real control over their choices.
Yes.
And so that was the milk, the cheese, the same thing. Cheese, the same thing with the meat. I lived in northern Wisconsin, and I've hunted, I've butchered animals. You kill an animal, you raise an animal and kill it, or you butcher it and you eat the meat. And if you want to share the meat with your neighbors, you share it with your neighbors.
Right.
Well, that's not, the USDA is part of that process now. You can say, no, we need, the national food supply needs something like the USDA, let's imagine that that's true, to assure the
healthy standards.
And it came out of a period of time when it was like the abattoirs were really disgusting. But if you have a local community, so a lot of this became, if you have a local community that wants to have a community food board or something like that takes responsibility for the health of their food region, that should be legal. So that was some of the things I realized, that our supply chain, there's more to it than just the bottle of honey I could buy in my local store. And then I got into, toward the end of doing my 10-mile diet, and I ate fine, and I had all sorts of adventures, and I wrote about them in my book. But I started to realize that if 100 people, this is just my number, it could have been 102, but if 100 people on Whidbey Island committed to a 10-mile diet, we would eat through the local supply of food. In other words,
Really?
we don't have, we
people.
have,
That's
in
all.
even people who eat local food now, I would say probably no more than 20 or 30% of their diet is local, unless they're farming, and it's, when you think about it, one of the things that got me on the 10-mile diet was a friend of mine who's a farmer. I asked her, could we feed Whidbey Island from Whidbey Island? And she said, she did. Number of people on the island, land that's zoned agriculture and that's available for agriculture, 2,000 calories a day, what grows well here. She did a calculation, and she said probably the whole population, 2 weeks in August. Right. We don't have a supply of local food that would make local food available as the norm. So that's when I sort of got onto local food is not a local food system.
Yeah, because that's what you're going to the regulations, what's illegal or what's scaled for the nation, or a very different way of raising animals.
Exactly. Not only that, but we've lost. So what is a food? So then I started thinking, what is a food system? And before that, I didn't care what a food system was as long as I ate.
You go to the grocery store.
You go to the grocery store. So it is processing. It's being able to turn your potatoes into potato salad or potato chips. Right. So it's processing. It's turning a product into something that is called value added, so that you can actually, that potato could be worth 10 cents as a potato, but it could be worth $1 as part of a potato salad.
Okay, all right.
So it's the processing, it's the preserving, it's canning, freezing, drying, all of those things that you could call season extenders. Okay, well, we've got tomatoes in August and September, but we don't have year-round. To have year-round tomatoes, to have a food system, we have to be able to freeze, can, and dry them. People do that in their home production.
Right.
But communities, like I was in the Rogue Valley, talking to some people who are involved in the food system there, and they said they used to have a cannery. And it was Rogue Valley tomatoes were famous. But, economies of scale, subsidies, all the different machinations that make the industrial food system able to produce so much food at a low cost, that sucked the processing capacity out of their community. They could not compete.
Right.
So we've lost the value-added products, we've lost the canneries, a lot of fishing communities, same thing. They used to have canneries.
Oh, sure. They bring the fish load in and then can it on land instead of these big monster factory ships that are.
So you start to work through this whole thing, and I mean, I tell my friends, it's like, this is not as sexy as sort of like a glistening cherry pie, but it is part of the glistening cherry pie. So we've lost the value added, the processing. The also processing is the abattoirs. You know, the ability
What's
to
an abattoir? Just for,
locally kill, and an abattoir is where the animal's killed, and a butcher is what happens that turns the carcass into cuts of meat.
okay.
So we are getting an abattoir back on Whidbey Island, but we didn't have one for a very long time. And so all the animals have to go on the ferry or on a truck over the bridge, and they have to go over to the only legally USDA legal processing, meat processing, over on the mainland. You know, it's not, you know, to regular eater, I don't care, as long as I get burger. But you see that this is the food economy. You know, it's like, this is the economy. This is how something gets out of the field. And people along the way are able to make enough money to put food on the table for their families.
By
So
putting
we
food
have,
on the table for you and your family.
we have lost our small scale or mid scale or regional food economy. So a lot of that has come out of the middle of our communities. I started trying to work this through, like, why is this happening? How is this happening? Part of it is the economies of scale. You know, you milk your cow and sell it to 2 neighbors. That's different from being able to, you know, milk 100 cows and, you know, with machines and blah, blah, blah. So scale makes a difference. It definitely makes a difference. Vertical integration is another thing you talk about. Vertical integration is, I don't just own the cows. I own the cows, the milking machine, the trucks, the refrigeration trucks, the storage locker. I own the whole thing top to bottom. I'm not outsourcing parts of my business to other people. So scale, vertical integration.
Which is what you have more with the big producers, right? They
Yeah,
own all
exactly.
From tip to toe. All right.
And you know, it's like a difference between having somebody who has an apple orchard and has like 15 different kinds of apples and is well known, and apple season comes and the barrels are out there, and somebody who has, you know, created a huge refrigerated plant, and, you know, the presses and the trucks and the delivery of the apple juice to the, you know, all the
Bottling
supermarkets.
and all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. We would not be feeding our population without it. I'm not saying that's evil and bad. I'm just saying that it's pulled the capacity of communities to feed themselves out of the middle of the community, and we have no idea it's happened because you go to the store. You want eggs, you go to the store. And so where it became consequential to me is, for me, that it's nutritious and delicious and all of those things, that's wonderful. But the things that shifted that were important to me is, number one, there was some place in the middle of my 10-mile diet where I stood in my backyard and I realized that I had changed, and that food, when I thought food, I no longer thought the store. And not only that, I didn't exactly even think my garden. I knew it is in there, or Trisha, my gardener friend's garden. I felt food. I was like, oh, I'm an animal. I live in food. Food is not scarce in nature, exactly. Food is everywhere. I mean, animals survive without the store, without their garden. They survive in the natural world because the world is edible.
That's right.
The world is including
edible.
me. This is like the whole
Yes.
dynamism of the natural world that
Yes.
we're part of, is that it's a mutually feeding, mutually supportive, mutually nourishing system.
Yes. Yes.
And that I am completely out of touch with, I've become incompetent in. Apparently there's like something like 75 fruits and vegetables that are normally sold in stores, and 75,000 fruits and vegetables that are edible on this planet. Don't keep.
I mean, that's close. That's close enough. I mean, it's like
tricky.
it's indeed an order of magnitude
Yes.
or two.
So
Yes.
that was the one experience. Like, I woke up as an eater. Like, I don't want to relegate my experience of myself as being alive to a system I don't know. I want to become more competent as an eater, as a real being in a real living world. So it was like the shift from anywhere, anytime, anything eater in the vast food courts of the industrial system to being a local relational eater, intimate with my food place. So that was one thing. And then the second thing that happened for me was this, I say eating is an act of belonging. and we've lost our food culture. And so for me, the pleasure in eating local food isn't about my own personal, like, oh, it looks prettier, or I can tell my dinner guests, blah, blah, blah. No, this is that I really have the experience of the hands that feed me. I know it's Georgie's beans. I feel the love. Not only feel the love, I feel the comfort. I feel the security. I am in a safe place because I am in relationship with these people who recognize me as part of them, and I recognize them as part of me. And I live by the grace of the success of these farmers and the success of the soils and how they tend the soils and how the community that lives underneath the surface is tended by these hands that feed me. So that, I call it relational eating. That eating is not a lone act, although it could definitely appear to be that because we're bipeds with hands and spoons, And so that was profound for me. And when I felt that, I realized, like in that old Madeline, and all is not well in my food place. My food and my farmers are struggling. Really great farmers cannot get secure tenure on good land. So we have, and people are making it as, basically, in a way, sharecroppers, or they're making it by farming on other people's land, or, like intensively farming a small piece of property that's theirs, or having a mortgage, or whatever. So it's not just the land, but it's the equipment. I mean, I have a friend who's growing grain on somebody else's very good land, but she doesn't have her own machinery, and the perfect time to harvest was a moment when the person who had the machine was going to come and do the harvest, and I don't know the correct story, it was, a relative of his got sick. She couldn't run the machine, he couldn't be there. She lost her whole harvest. Wow. So there's a question of owning the land, having the machinery, and then it's also a question of pricing, because things that are artisanal, that are made by hand, you can't pay somebody enough. It's like Georgie's beans are $9 a pound. Mm-hmm. Grown up
versus
in the prairie,
4 or 5 or whatever in the market.
Exactly.
But what we're looking at here in this transitional time is the subsidy that we are all paying to the oil and gas, cheap oil and gas, making it possible to truck the stuff from far, far, far away.
But it's not just that. It is, when you think of, that's why this is called blessing the hands that feed us. Whose hands? Whose hands? And what are their lives like? And because capital can flow around the world and people cannot. So somebody can take their bit wherever, like I decided for my 10-mile diet, I thought, okay, I'm going to have 4 exotics. One of them was olive oil. I'm not going to live without olive oil. So I thought, well, at least I could buy Napa Valley olive oil. I could be like
close, nearby.
Yeah, like
rather than Italy.
1,000 miles.
Italy, yeah.
But no, it's only bottled and distributed by Napa Valley olive oil. They buy it on the market from wherever they can get it.
Commodity.
It's a commodity. And so if the crop fails in Tunisia, no problem, no loyalty to the Tunisians, no loyalty to whatever, we're going to get it from Venezuela. Do I care as an olive oil eater? Absolutely not. I want my olive oil, right?
Right.
But then I saw, it's like once you see something, you can't not see it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I realized that if you want to have real food security in this world, what you really do need to do is let people who know how to farm the land of their birth, they need to stay there. They need to be supported in staying there and becoming prosperous there, and not becoming just factors of production, so that we can have cheap food. So you start to look into that. I mean, there are people who once they thought about the slaughterhouses or the concentrated animal feeding operations, that's when they sort of left the industrial food boat. Yeah. I left that boat, but when I started thinking about the human suffering that comes from a food system that's invisible, not only to the people who are all along the line, but also to the people who want to produce food and can't make a living. And so people say, for one thing, during my 10-mile diet, I want to meet. So a friend of mine had a friend who had some chickens, so I went to get the chickens, and he gave me 2 chickens and said that was $50. I was like, what? No, that chicken is like, yeah, right, it's frugal. So not to do like the whole shaggy dog story, but $5 a pound for chicken is actually what it costs to raise that bird. You know, chicken feed is not chicken feed. It's especially organic. It's expensive.
It's expensive, yeah.
Yeah. And then your land, you know, like the coop and the blah, 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 you know, all of the elements of raising that chick from, you know, egg to 8 weeks out and butchering it and, you know, plucking and gutting it and washing it, packaging it, all the things that go into that. That's $5 a pound. And so the question is, why is industrial food so cheap? And so you can think subsidies, you can think corporations, you can think, hands in the pocket of the politicians, but then you can think factory workers, you can think about factory farmers, you can think about sewage, you can think about all the things along the way that are, as they say, externalities. They're not visible.
So, go ahead. Right.
Yeah, so I don't want to belabor that piece, but that's when I started realizing, how do we rebuild our food systems, our local food systems, so that my farmers can be prosperous, so our soils can be in good shape, so that we don't lose our capacity to feed ourselves.
And even build it. That's what
rebuild
I want to say.
Yeah. So that's what got me to pursuing that question. And I'm not saying totally, I do 50-50, 50 industrial, 50 local. You know, let's be reasonable about this.
It's a transition.
Yeah, it's a transition.
We'll let you do that.
Right. And then, so I started these things called community food labs. It's bringing together the people who care about food in a community. Everything from eaters to farmers to grocers to nonprofits to
restaurateurs, caterers,
chefs, and
right.
you bring
Food
the
bank.
system together to look at the system. You start with celebration. What are the assets we have that we're building on? How cool are we? How powerful are we? How beautiful our lands? How wonderful our foods? Every community has assets, and you celebrate that. You start with celebration, and then you dive in and you say, okay, what's missing that if it were there would make a difference? Not, like not complaining about Monsanto, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But just saying, what are the pieces, starting to take a look at what is a food system and what are the pieces that are missing here, that if we had them, it would make a difference. And so you start identifying those, and without it being anybody, without allowing for, no, but we can't, that happened, we tried, I won't work with that person, we did a project together and I can't stand,
Right.
just like allowing all of that to sort of expand out without being in contradiction to one another. And that becomes the creative soup, where you start to say, all gaps are opportunities. It's like a permaculture principle. Everything on the property has a use, it's just maybe misplaced. So where are the opportunities in this Swiss cheese? And it is so exciting to watch communities get creative after they've been willing to be in the I don't know, or we tried and it failed, or it's too hard, or whatever, to get a creative moment and to say, oh, well, what if we did that?
Are you finding that that's a catalyzing moment?
I do find that, and I think I'm just developing my version of this. I'm sure there's many versions of this, but this is mine. And see, I started out in money, and so this is, I see it not as a food system anymore. I see it as a food economy. How do we rebuild our food economy so that young people, so that, vets, so that everybody can prosper along the chains? Because that's how it gets built. It goes beyond just the individual into something larger.
Yeah, if you're going to do a food economy, you have to make it work. I mean, that's part of the scale question.
Right. How do you scale sideways? See, it's not scaling up, but I see it as scaling sideways.
Fill the gaps.
Yeah.
is a sideways. It's
Yeah,
like we don't
so
have
the community
distributors or
supply their
transportation.
fruits and vegetables, you know, the produce that, you know, is fresh, picked every day. You have that, and maybe further out, you know, you have some of the meat and dairy and stuff like that. And maybe further out, you have some of the processing plants or grains or whatever. But you think of it as in concentric circles around the community. You have a hub, whether it's the individual eater or whether it's your, you know, home place, your eating place. And you just say, how can we bring more of this closer to home? And for me, it's sovereignty, it's food safety, it's nourishment, it's spirituality, it's belonging. It's like this panoply of qualities that we regain when we do this that we don't even know are missing, because I didn't know that was missing. So yes, I find that there are many aha moments. And the other thing about doing these food labs is this is not a corporate top-down or, you know, consultant-based process. It's basically community gardening. It's like you know, the fertility that's in a community, the fertility of the people, the creativity and the dreams and the knowledge and the, you know, the willingness to work and the hard stuff and the money and the expertise, all of that. You put that together and in proximity, you companion plant these gifts that people have so that something can flourish in that soil. You sort of like rebuilding the fertility of the local food economy, if you will.
Nice image. I like that. Yeah.
And I'm excited. I like, now I would like to go and serve whatever community wants to bring me in to support, you know, a consortium of local groups who have this commitment, like we want to do this, we want to rebuild our food economy, and to work with the community to bring out the best.
We need that everywhere.
I think
certainly
so.
In the industrialized world. Good for you. You know, you found your calling for this time. That's wonderful.
For this moment.
Well, take it and run with it.
It's my current peak moment. And we'll see, you know, I went from money to dialogue to food to community food labs. We don't know where it's going to go. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I'm excited.
Me
we get
too.
to come back in a few years and say, all right, how many new food systems, local food systems are flourishing?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you're so welcome.
You're watching Peak Moment TV. I think, is your community fertile ground for such a food lab? I hope so. You're watching Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. My guest is Vicki Robin, author of Blessing the Hands That Feed Us. Thank you for blessing us with
Yes.
this and your community.
Yes.
Watch us next time.